Welcome back. It is I, the most electrifying man in corpse entertainment, the Necrosexual. And this is another edition of One-on-One with the Grim One. Joining us today by way of Chicago, we have the steamiest Asian dumpling, as well as the creator of the Pastie Tapes Podcast. Welcome, Miss Siomai Moore.
Hi, thank you for having me. Welcome to my apartment in Chicago. Definitely did not tidy up for you at all, but
That's
whatever.
Totally rock and roll, baby. I like that. You seem to have a lot more natural light than my lair. I have the mood lighting going on, but it's all about the cult atmosphere.
It's fitting. I would not expect your lair to have, bright lights and all of that. So it's right. Perfect. This is exactly what I imagined you'd be.
Eventually we're going to have the special effects budget to get some pipe and drapes and some nice black curtains and black on everything. But until then, glad you can make it to talk about some very, very important stuff. So as we've been in this indefinite quarantine and chill session, it's been the perfect platform for me to roll out the one-on-one with the Grim One format. And each week, each podcast, each video cast, I should say, my guests and I will discuss one thing as a starting point. There's plenty of room for divergences, I'm sure will happen, whether it's a music album or a movie or something else. And in Siomai's case, it was brought to my attention that she is a big pro wrestling fan. And so when I heard that, I couldn't help but want to dive into a bottomless pit of pro wrestling. So I guess, Siomai, tell us a little bit about how the squared circles and the men and women and other perverts within the squared circle have affected your life.
Okay, so this story, this pro wrestling origin story starts before me. When my parents first came to America in the late 80s, my grandpa, who was already here for a few years before then, was okay, you guys need to get into a sport so that you can connect with Americans. For example, I love the LA Lakers and I love watching boxing. And my dad's okay, fighting. Sure. And, he watched boxing, in the Philippines, whatever. But then he's what is this, WWF, wild thing? And so it was something that my parents always, watched, before they had us children. And then when, growing up, it was something that would be on the TV every now and again. And when I was old enough to remember it and get into it on my own, I would say around second or third grade, maybe, right in the Attitude Era. That's when I was yes, this is my thing. And this is what I'm going to get into.
Yes. It's a very ripe age to get into the Attitude Era when you're, a young child, an impressionable child, seeing people beaten over the head with chairs, falling off of steel cages, a lot of beer trucks. But it was a magical golden time of wrestling. And I think we're around the same age, give or take. And same thing. I was, 10 years old. And I eventually stumbled upon, the world of Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. And it was the perfect timing because if it had been a couple years prior, WWF in the mid-'90s was really awkward and horrible. A lot of their main guys went over to WCW. And a little bit after, by maybe the early 2000s, mid-2000s, it was kind of it wasn't quite as amazing as, the peak of the golden era of raunchy 90s wrestling when WWF went full Jerry Springer show because they were competing with WCW and they had to stay relevant, which became known as the Attitude Era. And boy, did it pack a lot of attitude.
Absolutely. Totally grossly inappropriate for people our age back then, but whatever, I grew up watching Dawson's Creek with my mom while it was on. I don't think a 7, 8-year-old, 9-year-old should be watching that, but here we are. Wrestling.
You got to grow up one of these days, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can't stay sheltered forever.
No.
And true enough. Same thing with my family. My parents, they hated pro wrestling. So when I was a young pre-adolescent necrosexual, I wasn't allowed to watch it, but I would sneak out, or I would not sneak out, but I would sneak it in on Monday nights when it was Monday Night Raw and try to change the channel if I saw them coming. But interestingly enough, my aunt, my great aunt on my dad's side was, an Italian immigrant, and she loved wrestling because back then it was Bruno Sammartino, who one of their longest reigning, Italian American champions. With that said, now that we've sort of dipped our toes in the pro wrestling water. This is one-on-one with the Grim One. So in this special edition with Siomai Moore, we're going to talk about one wrestling match, and probably more than one, but focusing on one as a starting point that was especially influential to you. So Siomai, tell me, what match was that for you?
Okay, my one influential match for us to talk about to start with is TLC 2 from 2001's Wrestlemania 17. That was in Houston, I think, Houston, Texas. And that is the second TLC match that WWE had, or WWF, right, at the time, had.
Yeah.
But I think no TLC match has ever topped that. Definitely like outdid themselves, versus TLC 1, but TLC 2, a lot happened.
Yes, there was a lot. There were a lot of moving parts and a lot of moving tables and ladders and chairs and run-ins. But we had, three of the hottest, most dangerous tag teams at the time. We had the Dudley Boys, who were red hot in ECW, and then they were definitely innovators of violence in that regard. And then we had Edge and Christian, who were the defending champions, who had also won the first tables, ladders, and chairs match in SummerSlam 2000. And then, of course, we had the two extreme ravers, the Hardy Boys, who I think still had the best entrance music of the entire, Attitude Era, even though it was kind of new metal. And even though they dressed, their sense of style has definitely not held up well. They were complete fearless madmen and still are. Mm-hmm. They had also, all the members of this match had competed together in the first tables and ladders and chairs match. So this was not only a very competitive match with the participants, but they had a bar to raise, and raise they did. So tell me about the first time you saw that match. What went through your head?
Okay, I think I watched it live. Like, I don't know if I've made that up, but I know that I watched TLC 1 live because I remember begging my parents to pony up the whatever, like $60 at the time.
Back then, 45.
Yeah, we were not rich, and I remember watching SummerSlam 2000, and then I feel like, maybe I'm making it up, but I feel like I got them to buy this Mania because it was, I think, in April when it aired, and it would have been like the week after my birthday, and I was like, this is what I want.
Yeah.
So a lot happened in that Mania, but this match, like, definitely, I remember, like, even as a kid being like, this is a lot. And back then, there were whispers, right, that this isn't real. Like, this isn't old enough to, like, figure out this isn't entirely real.
Right.
But everything that they were doing, like, that's when it hit me. Like, this is absolutely real on, the physical level. Like, you can't fake any of that. Bodies are really flying everywhere. And I remember just being blown away by everything that was happening, and it was wild. And every time I rewatched it since then, it was like same feeling, like, holy shit, this is real.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's real damage. There's no way to gently fall through a table when you're being tipped over from a 20-foot ladder.
Right. There's no, like, gentle, safe way to spear someone from 20 feet in the air. Like, none of that. Yeah,
I think that was probably the highlight moment of that match was Edge hitting a spear on one of the, I think, Hardy brothers while dangling to grab the belt. That was pretty amazing. Of course, it had several people being knocked over from their ladders in the center of the ring. Through several tables, as well as on the outside. So pretty much it's amazing that through both of those matches, nobody was seriously maimed or injured or killed, even, because that was some crazy shit that they did.
Right. Like, it was just absolutely wild. I'm not much of a physical person now, and as a kid, definitely was the one who couldn't do the monkey bars. But seeing them do what they were able to do physically, hanging from belts, like, straight up just climbing a ladder, like, wild. It's wild to me.
Yeah. Who was your favorite team from that match? Who were you gunning for?
Okay. I think today I would say it was the Hardy Boys, but I know for a fact that I loved Edge and Christian.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which is, I don't know. I think that's kind of weird, but I saw a scrapbook. I think it's in my room somewhere, but I saw a scrapbook that I made when I was, like, in 3rd grade, and it has, like, pictures of my family. And then one page has a picture of Edge. And I was like, that's a weird choice for like, for a child to make, but
My family and Edge. Yeah.
And an Edge. Yeah. So definitely I know I was going for Edge and Christian.
Yeah.
I love them because they were just so bad, and like bad in a way that a little kid would be like, oh, like I know that I'm not supposed to be like that, or like, oh, they're talking about like sex or something, or they're being sexy, which the Dudley Boys weren't and the Hardy Boys weren't. And it was just very scandalous to me, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm gonna go for those guys because they're bad.
The other MVP of that match was there was a lot of run-ins, and you know, the one MVP in my book was Lita, not just for interfering in the match and doing some sick Hurricane Rana spots, but she really knew how to rock a whale tail.
Yeah. Okay. Talk about scandalous when you're a child, right? It's like, that's her underwear that is out. Wild. Something, I don't know. I love her. I cry sometimes when I watch some of her old matches. Definitely knew how to rock a whale tail. I don't know why that was a choice back then, but it was, and it was a thing. It
was the summer or soon after the summer of the thong song, so maybe that had some influence on it.
Yeah. The funny thing about that match was when, you know, now we have wrestlers, like female wrestlers who are wearing, you know, bra and panty sets like as their ring gear, and Lita would be wearing pants and, you know, long sleeve fishnet shirt, and her whale tail's out, and that was like as scandalous as it went. But in the match, she takes off her top, and I remember the ring announcers are like, take it all off, and it's like, okay, that's so weird to hear today, because that's kind of what they're wearing now anyway.
With wrestling too, there's definitely a lot of similarities you can see in regards to costuming and just overall theatricality to burlesque, or in my case, heavy metal. Did you ever consider wrestling as like something to get into, or were you just a fan?
Absolutely. I thought about it. I look at wrestling costumes a lot, like to understand how they're doing their rhinestones and embellishment. But when I first moved to Chicago about 3 years ago, I knew that there were pro wrestling gyms out here, or places where I could like learn how to do MMA or whatever. And I thought for a good week, maybe that's a lie, I thought for like a good 30 seconds, like, maybe that's what I should do with my free time. And this is like before I got like more seriously into burlesque. I was like, okay, there's this, you know, clinical that happens, whatever, 5 days a week. This is my gym. This is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going to spend my money. And then I found out that Michelle Lamore was teaching a fan dance class at the same exact time.
Yes.
And so I went with that instead.
Nice.
So I want to know what life would be like if I went the other route.
Yeah.
And took that wrestling gym clinical thingy. It would be very different. I think.
Probably more painful.
Yeah.
I was in pro wrestling training for maybe 6 months at a school in New Jersey. And it was great. It was important because it made me realize I should probably focus on being just the necrosexual more than the necrosexual as a pro wrestler. I mean, I still think I would excel at it in every way, except for the pro wrestling part. As Bret Hart once said, it's like being a human basketball, but it was definitely a good way to get in that mindset, to connect with people, the psychology, the costuming, all the flair, all the theatrics. But in terms of taking bumps and clotheslines, I'm good to never do that again.
Yeah, no thanks.
I never thought of myself as a quitter, but I've never been more relieved to quit that one thing in my life and be a spectator. So what made you choose TLC 2 over the first one?
I think that TLC 2 has more splash to it. I think it's so fun. It's so wild. I love TLC 1. Like I remember it distinctly. Like I know what that moment was like in my house when that match was happening. Like that is like a core memory of my childhood. But like in terms of influence and you know, how it's affected me as how I look at pro wrestling as a fan. And then also, I guess, like in hindsight, how I carry that over into my burlesque life and performance life. It's like, okay, this was all about entertaining the crowd. This was all about like hitting like really big moments, like perfectly. And also like knowing how to play with others, right? With all of those run-ins. I think TLC 2 is just the perfect match.
Indeed. my one complaint about it was it did end, in my opinion, it kind of ended a bit anticlimactically. You had Rhino, unstable. We're back in business.
We're back. You're good. Yes.
Yeah.
Your one complaint.
Yeah. It was a little bit, for me, the way it ended was a little bit anticlimactic. With it was like they ran out of spots or they did other spots and then they were just like, all right, well we gotta take this home somehow. So it was kind of comical in a way because you had Rhino like pushing. He had one of Edge and Christian over his shoulders and he was like climbing the ladder, and it just sort of looked like kids playing. But aside from that, it was an amazing match and super entertaining, and also pretty amazing that all those teams still wrestle today, 2 decades later.
Right. They're all still alive, number one, and 2, still working.
Who was your favorite wrestler of that time?
Oh my gosh. Of that time, I loved Eddie Guerrero and Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit, of course, very tragic.
Yeah.
But I think like those, I don't know, I have a lot of loves.
Yeah.
But I loved Eddie Guerrero so much. Yeah. I love Chyna a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think I can't not love her. I just named like 4 people, but
yeah, no, I mean, that's all fair. It's hard to choose.
Those are my favorites. Yeah. What about you?
I'd say at that time, definitely Stone Cold was like the first one. As a 10-year-old, you see this guy that would give people the middle finger and drink beer, and of course, like, yeah, that guy's cool, and he had pretty good, entrance music. Got me pumped up. The Rock, of course, once The Rock became the People's Champion, he was another funny guy that could talk and entertain and put on a great match. In ECW, I always liked Rob Van Dam. Because, he was just he was like watching a ninja, again, super, super cool outfit. Because same deal. I mean, part of it is things like not just who they are, but how they look and how they perform. And he moved like a ninja in a video game. So there was not anybody that really had like a moveset like him. And I really liked Val Venus, which is a shame because in real life he kind of seems like a dick. But the character of Val Venus was just hilarious, just super funny. Again, just the most raunchy shit you can think of, a porn star that goes into pro wrestling that would be, having affairs with people's girlfriends or wives and almost getting his penis chopped off at the conclusion of a wrestling show and then still basically having him written into I think he was written into a corner, and then he described that he was able to escape because there was shrinkage, and then like John Wayne Bobbitt made an appearance to like just sort of like, hey, remember this guy? So yeah, I mean, but again, there was a lot of funny dudes to choose from,
Yeah.
So much talent back then. Of course, Mankind.
Oh, of course, Mankind. Yeah. Always.
Yeah, which was another point that you mentioned. I know it's hard choosing a favorite match, just like it's hard choosing a favorite wrestler, but one of the other matches that you mentioned were super influential was, of course, the Hell in a Cell.
Yeah. I think about it a lot because it is so, I don't know, there's so many spots in it that weren't planned.
Yes.
That just came together beautifully, and like 2 obviously like masters of their crafts colliding who, were in really dangerous situations but knew how to keep going.
Yeah.
And I think talk about like skills in improv and like knowing how to take a bump and then also willing to literally risk your life for your art.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, that match was pretty amazing, just seeing the lines between entertainment and real life obviously blurred because you can tell the announcers, JR and Jerry Lawler, like it wasn't planned for him to fall through the top of a 20-foot roof and have his tooth knocked through not knocked through his lip into his nose.
Right.
So to see that and see that real life drama of them trying to pick him up and stop the match and then start the match again. So it was quite the zenith in a lot of ways of the Attitude Era.
All good things. Okay, wait, I want to cheat and talk about one more wrestler though.
That's cool, yeah.
Okay, so another favorite. All right, yeah. I'm just going to name the whole roster. But another favorite was Rikishi, surprisingly, of mine. Of
course.
Yeah, I mean, like him and Scotty 2 Hotty, right? So cool. They're doing the worm, whatever. But I think like as I've been taking this quarantine time to unpack, like who is Siomai Moore? What are my influences? I thought a lot about pro wrestling because it obviously makes up a lot of who I am as a normal pedestrian person and, as a burlesquer. But I realized there's something really strangely magical about Rikishi, who I've heard is an asshole in real life.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, like terrible,
Yeah.
like didn't attend his son's wedding, like all of that.
Yeah.
But
a lot of those personalities and pro wrestlers, one of those don't meet your idols.
oh yeah, yeah.
Another reason to like Mick Foley because he's one of the genuinely friendly, wholesome dudes who actually reached out to my friend who had cancer a couple years ago.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I digress. Yeah.
Yeah. But with Rikishi, like something that I don't think hit me until like now as, someone who is a fat performer and very proud of being a fat performer, like Rikishi was a fat dude and his gimmick, his like ending move, right? Like sticking his ass like in someone's face, like all of that. The stink face, like was really funny. But I think what the magic and the influence that Rikishi has on me is that he was a big dude and kind of goofy, but still at the end of the day, incredibly powerful. And I think that's like, in some weird way, like part of what Siomai Moore is in a very like convoluted way, but
also very powerful. Indeed.
Very powerful. Got an ass that kills, all of that.
Yeah, and knows how to dance
Rikishi.
Because Rikishi did dance.
Okay, wait, I want to cheat and talk about one more wrestler though.
That's cool, yeah.
Okay, so another favorite. All right, yeah. I'm just gonna name the whole roster, but another favorite was Rikishi, surprisingly, of mine. Of
course.
Yeah, I mean, like him and Scotty 2 Hotty, right? So cool. They're doing the worm, whatever. But I think like as I've been taking this quarantine time to unpack, like who is Siomai Moore? What are my influences? I thought a lot about pro wrestling because it obviously makes up a lot of who I am as a normal pedestrian person and, as a burlesquer. But I realized there's something really strangely magical about Rikishi, who I've heard is an asshole in real life.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, like terrible, like didn't attend his son's wedding, like all of that.
Yeah.
But
a lot of those personalities and pro wrestlers, one of those don't meet your idols.
Oh yeah.
Another reason to like Mick Foley because he's one of the genuinely friendly, wholesome dudes who actually reached out to my friend who had cancer a couple years ago.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah. I digress. Yeah.
Yeah. But with Rikishi, like something that I don't think hit me until like now as, someone who is a fat performer and very proud of being a fat performer, like Rikishi was a fat dude and his gimmick, his like ending move, right? Like sticking his ass like in someone's face, like all of that. The stink face, like was really funny. But I think what the magic and the influence that Rikishi has on me is that he was a big dude and kind of goofy, but still at the end of the day, incredibly powerful. And I think that's like, in some weird way, like part of what Siomai Moore is in a very like convoluted way, but
also very powerful. Indeed.
Very powerful. Got an ass that kills, all of that.
Yeah, and knows how to dance
Rikishi.
Because Rikishi did dance with again talking about a team who got way cooler than they had any right to be was too cool.
Too cool for sure.
Yeah, and certainly I'm sure that one of them was Jerry the King's kids, but what still wasn't exactly like getting a main event push. And do you remember what they were before Too Cool?
No.
Okay. Yeah, it's like I remember seeing them on TV, like maybe 1 or 2 episodes. It would have been like Sunday night. So before they were Too Cool, they were called Too Much, and they were like, it was almost like the gimmick was they were secretly kind of gay, like like they were pretty boys, and they wore like matching like I think purple. It was like hideous. Everybody hated them. And then I remember watching the episode, I think it might have been on Sunday Night Heat or Monday Night Raw, where they like repackaged them, like, oh, we're too cool now. And they graduated to being like Vanilla Ice type people.
Right. Here's our like velour, like bucket hat. And we're doing
it was the best in the words of late 90s fashion.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You still watch wrestling?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes and no. Okay. So I stopped watching wrestling. I don't remember when this was. Maybe you would remember. There was the live sex show, the live sex celebration, sometime after this Mania with Edge and Lita. And
wow.
Yeah, I remember like that came on and my mom was like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. And then like wrestling just like left my life. And so I missed, I missed a lot of, the coming up of like John Cena and CM Punk and like that whole like kind of middle thing. But when I was in grad school in Syracuse, I think this was like 2015, 2016, I needed background noise while I was studying. And I was like, you know what? This is what's on TV right now. Let's put on SmackDown. And then it just became a thing, SmackDown and Raw, and then eventually paying for the network, became a thing that I did. And so I kept up with it, I think, from like 2015, 2016 through about last year, before burlesque like really picked up for me. And I haven't been able to like keep up with all of the content that's coming out. But I had a good like number of years there recently where I was watching it religiously, every pay-per-view, every episode. I was there watching it. But with quarantine times right now, I've been slowly, keeping up, getting up to date. I've been dipping my toe into the AEW world. I read a lot about wrestling, but I haven't been watching it just because there's so much out there.
Yeah, it's kind of like the sports page where you can read the results without having to see it.
Yeah.
But that is the magical thing about the network too, is they have so much classic material, not just of WWF and WWE, but of WCW and ECW. So it's really easy to take a stroll down memory lane with like pretty much whatever you can want to watch. And some great documentaries too.
Yeah, I love watching those. That I think is something I kept up with more than like the actual regular week-to-week programming.
Yeah, the stories behind the stories. Vice with their Dark Side of the Ring, of course. Chris Benoit story that'll kind of leave you gutted after you watch it. But then they also did one on New Jack, which was lighter in comparison.
Right, still wild. And
still
weird,
pretty crazy.
But
we have the Pasty Tapes podcast. Tell us about that.
So the Pasty Tapes podcast is my little burlesque slice of the world where I interview performers and get their burlesque origin stories, talk about some of their career highlights, all of that. It's definitely my selfish way of being able to get advice and learn from people and have nosy conversations with them. But I just happen to publish it for everyone to listen to. But
it's not selfish because it's one of the very popular burlesque podcasts out there. Give yourself a rub, pound the back, right?
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of work. I knew nothing about editing or recording or anything like that when it first started. And I feel like I've grown as a producer and host, and the show has gotten better and better. And so it's something I'm really proud of. And, we have some interesting folks on there.
What else is on the horizon? Anything you're excited about, for the fans at home watching?
As long as, everything is back on track with our world, I should be performing in New York in July for Calamity Chang's Asian Burlesque Extravaganza. I think that's mid-July. So if it happens at East Coast, come out and see me. Otherwise, that's kind of it, right? Like we're kind of on pause right now.
Siomai Moore, I'd like to thank you for going one-on-one with the Grim One. Hey, stay beautiful. I love the leopard print.
Thank you.